Awesome, everyone. Always looking forward to having these amazing conversations every Thursday at this point in time. Some of you might be heading out, getting to work, and it's always good to be abreast with some of the current happenings taking place within cyberspace so that you can actually be on the cutting edge in terms of knowing, being aware of all the various challenges, things that are really taking place so that you can be on the cutting edge, be well informed, be well aware, so that you're able to enable and help your organization to be as effective, efficient in terms of their operation. And we can all agree that cyberspace is definitely, as I was then normally say, become a very, unstable environment in terms of all the things that are happening. At times it makes you really wonder, um, as you were actually discussing, of seeing, are these things actually as a result of AI in the background, or is it really the human intervention? But
Yeah.
let's see as we go along in our conversation. Very interesting things that are happening. But before we actually get into our article review, then there's a number of cyber news headlines that I just want to bring you up to date with that you might um, have missed. Since the start of the day. Some of the current happenings for today. If you go over to the Accra News, then you have the Microsoft expands cloud login to counter rising nation states. Adobe rolls out new patches for actively exploited cold fusion vulnerability. And also coming out of bleeping computers, we've seen jump cloud breach traced back to North Korean state hackers. Also, APT-41 hackers target Android users with Rim Spy Dragon Egg. So the list goes on and on as it relates to the various, challenges, breaches, the various attempts by the bad guys, as they would say, in order to really infiltrate and to um, exploit the various vulnerabilities that exist within our environments that we operate. And with that said, welcome to our weekly cybersecurity article review in 30 minutes. And in this episode, we are going to be discussing a recent news article stating Team TNT gang may be targeting Azure and Google Cloud users in addition to AWS. And to provide some expert analysis of and also insights into this article, we have Nate Knowles and Chris Carter. Guys, thanks for taking the time, as usual, to provide your valuable insights and analysis in this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, I guess I'll jump. I'll kick this off here. Yeah. So as Richea was saying, there is this group called Team TNT. Uh, there's questions about whether it's this actual group or a spin-off group or a copycat. But basically, this group's been around for a while, and they've been known for basically uh, going in and doing scrapes looking for AWS credentials. And once they retrieve those credentials, they go into those cloud environments based on what those credentials are linked to, and they cause havoc. That havoc could be scraping for more credentials, could be also for disrupting the environment as well. But the worst is basically exfiltrating data or data theft, right? So, as I said, they've been around for a while. They stopped, and now they're kind of back at it again. And so the way that they're doing this is they are accessing what they refer to as Jupyter notebooks, right? And those notebooks are basically a open source web application that allows individuals to create and share documents that contain live code, equations, visualizations, and narrative text, right? Um, so you have a lot of researchers and data scientists that use these Jupyter notebooks um, that span uh, in the verticals of education. uh, obviously tech companies. You have other things, other verticals like the pharmaceutical industry, right? So, uh, with that being said, there's a lot of IP, right, involved with a lot of these Juniper notebooks. Um, they're getting in there based on weak security that's set up for these notebooks, or they're just basically open, right? So, as I said, they've been attacking AWS accounts for a while, and now they're changing gears to attack the Azure and Google Cloud environments as well. So,
No, and I think to that point, they're potentially thinking about expanding the scope of their attacks.
hmm
They focus primarily, as you mentioned, Nate, on stealing cloud infrastructure credentials from these Jupyter notebooks, right? But if you have a Docker container out there, right?
yeah,
So their vulnerable Docker deployments are also in scope of their attack. And as always, right? They continue to improve. They're improving their tactics, techniques, and procedures, which makes it much more difficult to detect and stop their activities. I think if you have a cloud environment, I think the article advised that you implement security measures to protect against these types of attacks, including authentication. I think configuration, patching vulnerable web applications, and making sure that you're limiting your container permissions. So
hmm
all that to say, right? The bad guys are not sleeping, and we have to stay abreast. One thing I'd like to, the article didn't mention it, but CIS has this thing they call the benchmarks. I think
hmm
that's a great place to start, is to maybe look at the CIS benchmarks, especially for cloud. That really would mitigate any potential damages or vulnerabilities that you mitigate any vulnerabilities that could be susceptible to opening the door for a malicious actor to walk in and wreak havoc.
yeah, no, absolutely. Um, Shameless plug coming. Um, so basically, where I work at Racktop, we protect the data where it's most important at the data layer, right? So, in conjunction to this article in itself, these hackers are getting in because they have credentials, right? They have the logon, they have the password, multi-factor authentication. That's been known. It's possible to
Yeah.
crack that as well, right? So you have that. You have these layers that you have to think about, right? From a protection standpoint, you have the identity layer, right? You have the device layer, you have the network layer. I'm talking about the CISO zero trust maturity model right here, right? You have, what I mean? You have the application and
You stole you stole my talking points, Nate.
oh, my bad, my
That's exactly
bad,
where I
my
was going.
bad,
But
my
no,
bad.
absolutely.
Sometimes I
It's
got gas
great
in
to
the
see
mouth.
that
I
we're on the same
apologize.
page, right?
Yeah,
No, I love it.
yeah. So,
I,
yeah, yes, sir.
yeah, I guess that's the fun part of having this conversation, in that we're
Yeah.
actually thinking alike, so we're definitely on the right path. Yeah, go ahead, Nate, as you
Yeah.
were saying.
So, no, I don't want to steal the thunder. Continue with the thunder there.
No, it's no thunder. I think it's important that, I was just gonna plug the zero trust network architecture,
Yeah.
understanding that at the end of the day, right? I think I was just continuing that thought. It comes down to the data.
hmm
Again, Richey, you've heard me say this many times. You have people with devices all over the world uh, trying to connect to your network, right? To access an application to interact with data. The path to wreak havoc for a bad actor is there's just many different tripwires. There are many different opportunities. So I think having a zero trust network architecture, right, is going to be critical. In terms of thwarting these types of attack, right? Having something like a zero trust reference architecture does help. Looking at the different aspect of it. So No, I think we're saying basically the same thing, Nate, and I'm glad to see that that it's taking the zero trust um, paradigm is becoming more and more relevant, right?
Oh
So
yeah, and it's funny, right? So, excuse me. We've all heard the phrase, "Cloud is just someone else's data center," right? At the end of the day, right? So you got to kind of keep that in mind. Um, you have to have the same protections you have on prem. You have to have twice as much in the cloud, right? Because it isn't just your architecture that your data is running on. It's architecture that's being shared with other customers. So
yeah,
it's it boggles my mind. Like as I'm as we've probably read this article, all three of us, like 5 or 6 times, right, to kind of get the gist of it, right? Um, we have environments that set up these honeypots, right? That kind of we invite the hackers in, and just to see how they're doing it, right? Please don't attack my environment, my honeypot. Please, it's my
yeah,
important information, my important honeypot. And we're using that to figure out what they're doing. But when I guess it discusses the honeypot that was used here, it told them that this is just a dry run. We're not showing you the real goods. There were
yeah,
function calls. Probably over 50 or 60% of the function calls weren't even used. So they're building up for a larger attack at the end of
yeah,
the day. So you know all verticals are being affected by this because everyone wants to go to the
yeah,
cloud because it's easier. It's someone else's problem. Blah 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 blah.
yeah,
But people have to. Businesses have to pay attention to things like just because it's not in your data center, it doesn't mean it's secure. Just because it has one of the three large monikers that are running your environment doesn't mean it's secure. You gotta stay attentive to what's going on in the environment, and it's simple things. Zero trust is the way to go because the attack isn't always going to be malware. The attack isn't always going to be a ransomware attack. The attack is most of the time insider threat, right? And it's data exfiltration, right? And the last one I stated, data exfiltration, that is the worst of all of it, right? Because as I said, they're doing you a favor when they're encrypting your data or they're deleting your data, because at least they're in your environment. When they just steal your stuff, they just steal your stuff. You know, it's like having a blow pop when you were a kid and the bully took it away from you, right? You could get
yeah,
another blow
yeah,
pop, but it ain't that same blow pop you had in your hand. Once it's
yeah,
gone, it's
yeah. It's
gone.
not the same. Yeah, I think like I was mentioning before. There's so many different pieces of it. You think about the workforce where you have your full-time employees, you have part-time employees, you have contractors, you have visitors coming in, right? You look at it from your customer's perspective. Customer I would classify as uh, the public, right? You have suppliers, you have purchasers, you have resellers, right? And you have franchisees, right?
Hmm.
Now you look at the devices, whether it's a laptop or an IoT device or handheld device, right? Managed versus unmanaged, mobile. It's just a whole gamut of it. And I think the more we improve on the technology side, the more vectors of attack, um, right, appear.
Right.
And we have to be, unless we have kind of a zero trust mindset,
Hmm.
right? Thinking about things like your micro perimeters, having security controls in place, governing those controls, right? Having risk management, endpoint management, automation, and all this orchestration, access management, and information protection, all across the board.
Hmm.
All these things have to be a part of your roadmap when you're thinking about protecting an enterprise.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a thought popped into my mind, right? We're talking about, all the different vectors of access that people can get to our data, right? And I, I hate to say this, but where is the responsibility of the application? Where is the responsibility of the hardware vendor when it comes to security, right? Because when we have these updates, it's because something wasn't patched, right? In the original code. It isn't it to me most of the time it isn't that, well, the hacker just found, a way to get in, It was because version 1 or version 2 didn't cover this hole. Version 3 and version 4 didn't cover this hole, right? And so the hackers are able to expose that, you know. You look at code back in the day in the 80s, obviously you didn't have the internet, right? So it wasn't you didn't have as much exposure. So I will fall on my sword for that and admit that. But code was solid, you know. Unix back in the day, your Solaris, your HPUX, your AIX back in the day, you weren't breaking that, because there was solid code, you know. Now, fast forward to now, you have Linux, you have Red Hat, you know. You see articles all over the place. Leak found in, this version of Linux, or leak found in that, it's it's the purity of the actual code writing, the purity of the software where people actually put in the hard work to make sure I'm going to produce an excellent product. You know, um, you look at our OSs that we're running on our laptops, right? What's the use of having a Windows update, right? To update the code, right? Because something was missing in a previous version, you know.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I think it's a change. It's a change of the times where, you know work ethic isn't the way it used to be. You bought a car in the 80s, that joint was solid. you know, you buy a car now, it's built out of the same material as the fiberglass backboard on a basketball court. You know.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, you have actually opened a whole, I mean, can of worms, as I would say. I mean, in terms of that line of conversation, it's a whole debate. I can actually see the various, I mean, arguments, line of conversation actually coming out of what you have just said. There are so many tangents to that conversation. I mean, many persons would say what you have actually saying is somewhat relative to some extent. I mean, code back then in terms of how do you justify whether code is very solid versus what you have now in comparison to the fact that there was only a particular closed group, there was so much exposure to coding or application, the internet, all of these systems that we have. So the ability of maybe many persons actually breaking these systems was actually very small compared to what you have now, the exposure, the resources that you have. So there are so many factors that you could actually go
Oh
into
yeah.
as it relates to, I mean, what you have actually just gone into as it relates to that. But that's a very important point I've actually raised to um, that extent. Importantly, coming out of this article, though, I'm seeing that I think it's in paragraph 3. It says that this continuing from paragraph 2, researchers with Sentinel 1 goes on to say, which began in June, includes the hallmarks of the notorious Team TNT, though full attribution is difficult. And it says, that said, given the amount of work the miscreants have done to improve their techniques and the addition of Azure and Google Cloud accounts to the list of targets, the group looks set to ramp up its attacks, according to Alex Delamont, Delamont, researcher with Sentinel-1 Sentinel Lab Unit. Now, what's your thought on this in terms of uh, what does this actually means for us as security practitioners or organizations on our whole?
I'll let you take that first, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I think I kind of got preoccupied with attribution when you talked about attribution. It's always a challenge. You think about someone logs into your network via the Onion browser, or they compromise another entity and then hop from that entity. It's just going back and going just trying to unpeel the onion, so to speak, and try to get to the attribution. Attribution is always one of the most challenging aspects of any incident response. um, I remember when I was working at an insurance company, one of the things we had to do was there was an OFAC requirement that says if a if you pay ransomware, if you pay like a ransom
Mhm.
to an entity that is considered a sanctioned entity, such as North Korea, Russia, Iran, right, what George Bush would call the axis of evil, you
Mhm.
could potentially you'll be liable and you could go to jail. And we had to find a research firm that would actually do that, and it was a very daunting task because we just could not find anyone who could say with 100% certainty we can attribute this attack or this malicious action to a specific user. So that's the part that you literally lost me when you talked about attribution, because it's been uh, kind of a very throughout my career, it's one of the things that I've grappled with. I've been challenged by it, and I still don't know how to solve it. Um, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Nate, but
So
it's
when
something that continues to bedevil me.
yeah, oh yeah. So yeah, I hate plugging. So basically, when it comes to knowing the account, right, that did the attack, when it happened, what host it came from, that's what Racktop does. We're able to tell you all that information that you just have been pondering about your entire career.
I love it.
We
For benefit,
as I say in Pennsylvania, we them cats. So yeah,
uh,
I it's 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 a bewilderment. You get attacked. These individuals say, "Hey, we have your data, or we have the decryption keys to decrypt the data we encrypted. Pay us, and your problems will go away." And it's wild, right? Because it's you're gonna come in my house, you know,
Yep.
and mess up my floor, and then I gotta pay you to clean it up, you
Yep.
know. But again, you hear the term ransomware so much. As I said, it's ransomware. Ransomware is synonymous to the term soul food from the 70s, right? It's a catchphrase. Everyone knows it. But the main factor that we all need to focus in on is, and I sound like a broken record, data theft, data exfiltration. That's where the rubber meets the road. We need to stop the exfiltration. You know, um, yeah. To what you were saying, kind Sir Carter. You know, there are tools out there that can give you that answer that you need, that you've been looking for your entire life. You know, I am your mecca when it comes to needing that solution. You know, but yeah, it's a change of the times. It isn't a zero trust. It's a no trust, right? Like you can't trust anything. We're in a very big brother arena when it comes to cybersecurity. Right? We need to know everything. We need to know exactly when a file was touched, who touched it, um, what did they change? Did they change the ownership? Did they change group ownership? Are they reading? Are they writing? Are they encrypting? Are they deleting? How often are they deleting? This is where behavioral analytics come into play, um, where you take notice of what actions are human-like versus not human-like, and then you kind of go into those measures. Um, I know AI is a huge thing right now, and as Richey mentioned at the very, very beginning of this meeting we're having here, uh, you just got to wonder. These attacks are extremely intelligent. They're extremely proficient, right? And you have to wonder. I'm not saying as a human race we can't get that smart, but it, it's just a bewilderment of the mind how accurate and how pinpoint these attacks are, right? Um, it isn't like the old school virus scanning tools, right? That I mean, we knew the game. Whenever a virus would come out, then all of a sudden, McAfee has the fix. A half a day later, you can kind of draw to your conclusions where I'm getting to. But this is much different. This is a worldwide event where it's like we're watching a cage match, and in that cage is our data as as uh as the opponent one, and the opponent two are all the attack vectors, right? And so what does our data have to do? Our data has to find other resources. They're not staying in the cage by themselves. They're tagging out. Slapping the hand of Georgia Animal Steel to kind of come in and try to help them protect themselves against these different attack vectors. It's it's actually it's scary, but at the same time amazing the
Yeah.
creativity that's being used to get to your data.
And it would
You
only
know,
get better.
yeah, and it's only getting better. The
Yeah.
cage will get bigger. You know,
Yeah.
I
Good
went on a
stuff.
tangent. My apologies, Richey.
No, great, great. No worries. I mean, I always like, enjoy, listening to, as I have always said that all of us have our various areas of, experience or areas of passion. So I am always open to hearing those levels of, conversations. Very importantly, coming out of this article is a section that states that the meticulous attention to detail indicates the actor has clearly experienced plenty of trial and error. And the actor has also improved the tool's data formatting to enable more autonomous activity, which demonstrates a certain level of maturity and skill. And this, in of itself, to me, speaks a lot in terms of the time, the dedication, the attention to details that these threat actors are actually putting in terms of the level of work to mature their skill set. And I think that so far we have tools, we have the resources, we have persons that are very skilled. But I believe that, I mean, data has become so valuable to these, threat actors out there that they carry out these various activities, knowing the value of data to organizations, which speaks to the fact that there must be some amount of maybe internal restructuring in terms of where the priorities are as it relates to the skill sets within organization, ensuring that persons have the right support to actually execute and carry the necessary um, uh, activities that they need to do to actually protect these various, organizations. So I don't think there is a lack of tool. There's a lack of, skill set, but is it's a whole different ball game. These threat actors are actually day and night. These persons do not sleep, as they would normally say. So we have to basically change our approach. The cultural mindset that exists within this organization, so that we're able to better protect our business assets that exist within these environments. So, guys, any final words? I mean, we're actually down to the last minute.
Yeah, we're done. But I think the incentive to do this, right? The impact is far-reaching. You think about with a data breach, there's the potential for financial loss, reputational damage, service disruption, intellectual property theft, regulatory and compliance, aspects that could potentially cause a business to just no longer exist. So I think as organizations that are in the market to make money, um, we all have a vested interest, or we have a motivation and an incentive to ensure that our digital assets are protected. And it really comes down to the data and the mechanisms, the controls, the technologies that we put in place to ensure that data assets are, you know, appropriately protected. Is going to be critical. It's a critical business decision.
Yeah.
Data is the new currency.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
guys.
I
So,
mean,
oh,
no, 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 no. Please
okay,
cut
great.
me off
Sure.
because I'll go off on another tangent.
Okay, great. So,
This was
guys,
great, gentlemen.
I mean, having this conversation, guys, as you will recognize that there's so much to actually learn from having these open conversations, and it actually helps you to be more prepared for, I mean, what lies ahead in cyberspace. So there you have it. I mean, our weekly cybersecurity and GRC article review in 30 minutes. So see you guys same time, same place next week.
Take care, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Goodbye.